Well, let's bring in our representative from the Labour Party this morning who's going to talk to us today. And it's the Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Darren Jones, who joins me now from Bristol. Very good morning to you, Darren Jones. And I'll start off actually asking you about those latest GDP figures, since we were just talking about them. What do you make of them? Better than expected, not the contraction that had been feared?
Well, I mean, if we're celebrating the fact that the country is not in recession, then I suppose it is good news. But the fact that the economy is not growing at all is devastating news, because we know that the cost of living for people at home, our bills, our food bills, the petrol price at the pump is continuing to go up day after day. We know that as a government, when we're trying to do pay settlements for public sector workers, the cost of running public services, because of inflation, that's going up and up and up. You need an economy that's growing in order to be able to get the revenue to come in to help people with higher pay and to help the government to be able to pay for public services. And Rishi Sunak promised he was going to get the economy growing, and it has flatlined, which quite frankly seems to be exactly the same for the Conservative Party in its attempts to turn the country around. His plan is failing.
Let me move on to the issue of the Home Secretary, who's caused some controversy, as you know, over her article in The Times yesterday, raising concerns about pro-Palestinian protests and the policing at them. Is it fair for her to have her say, given her concerns about safety at the marches?
Suella Braverman, at the moment, is the Home Secretary. She is a member of the cabinet in our government. She's entitled to her views, but she should make them privately within the cabinet meeting, and the government should come to a clear position. But might I say that the position that she put forward in that article was fundamentally in breach of the responsibilities of being the Home Secretary. The police in our country have been independent of interference from politicians for hundreds and hundreds of years. It's for the police to be able to decide operationally how to maintain order on our streets, not for politicians who, quite frankly, are just trying to build their campaign to become the next leader of the Conservative Party, to interfere in these matters in the way that she has.
Well, yes, and what she's saying is that the police are biased when it comes to protests, but some might ask what's wrong with holding the police accountable. Isn't she entitled to comment on the broader culture of police, as her supporters say?
Yes, the police should be held to account in the same way that any other arm of the government and our public services should be. But I mean, Suella Braverman might say that she's making legitimate points. We all know what she's doing. She's trying to stoke division within the Conservative Party. The Conservative Party is out of control. The Prime Minister hasn't got a grip of his cabinet ministers, let alone the broader party, either in Parliament or more widely. And this is interfering with a really important issue, which is not party political, which is Remembrance Sunday, which of course has to happen without interruption. But equally, we live in a democracy with freedom of speech. People are entitled to make the case for the issues they care about within the law, with appropriate respect for each other's views, even if you disagree with each other. And it's the job of the police to be able to help that to happen in a peaceful and lawful way, without politicians like Suella Braverman, who are gearing up for a Conservative Party leadership election, trying to weaponise it for their own personal ambitions.
Well, you say she's weaponising it. Lee Anderson, Deputy Chair of the Tory Party, has tweeted today backing what she says. He said, Suella is guilty of saying what most of us are thinking and saying. Thank goodness we have a Home Secretary who refuses to be cancelled. And he goes on to say she's using everyday language used by everyday people. Labour MPs would know this if they got out more.
I mean, I'm at home here in Bristol and I talk to my constituents all of the time. I don't think I need to get out more. But what Lee Anderson is saying is, I think, from that tweet, he's saying that the British people would be happy for a Home Secretary as a politician to tell the police to act on individual operational matters in line with their political view. I don't think the public would say that they agree with that. I think what Lee Anderson is suggesting in his tweets is that the public would be happy for politicians on their own individual decision or their own party political ideological view to decide what issue can be protested and what issue can't be protested. I'm sorry, that's not the way that our democracy works. I don't think the public agree with that. What the public do agree with is that Remembrance Sunday services should go ahead uninterrupted, with proper due respect for the importance of that, for that part of our annual calendar and our remembrance for what happened during the war. Everybody agrees with that, including the police, which is what they're trying to do.
Labour were calling for her to be sacked yesterday. Is that still the case? Does Labour want to see the Home Secretary be sacked?
Well, Suella Braverman is in breach of the ministerial code. I mean, you can't have members of the cabinet going out, putting articles out, making policy decisions that have not got number 10 sign off, which appears to be the case. It wasn't quite clear yesterday whether it was signed off or not. But clearly she's freelancing here, and she's doing it for her own purposes because of arguments within the Conservative Party, which is out of control. The Conservative Party are in government. That means the government is out of control, and the Prime Minister, if he is strong enough and has control of the party, should sack her as a consequence of that.
Well, you talk about control of the party, but Keir Starmer hasn't sacked members of his cabinet for being misaligned with his position on a ceasefire in Gaza. If you're saying that Rishi Sunak is weak for being unable to control his cabinet, wouldn't that be the case then with Keir Starmer?
The Labour shadow cabinet is united in our position on the Middle East, which is that Hamas as a terrorist organisation clearly won't agree to a ceasefire, but that we need to try to negotiate a humanitarian pause so that aid can be made available to innocent civilians in Palestine, in Gaza, who are suffering the tragedy of what's happened at the hands of Hamas terrorists. Now, some of my colleagues, only this week, one of my colleagues chose to resign from the front bench because he felt so strongly that he wanted to make his individual case about a particular way forward. At least he had the decency to resign so he could do that, noting that we have a collective responsibility in our party politics here in the UK. Suella Braverman is the Home Secretary in Cabinet, in government. And she's freelancing in this way with no consequence, clearly in breach of the ministerial code. These are kind of important constitutional frameworks that we must follow in this country, which we were used to being completely disregarded under Boris Johnson. And now it seems that Rishi Sunak is too weak to enforce his own ministerial code in respect of his own minister's behaviour.
Is Labour happy for these pro-Palestinian marches to go ahead tomorrow on Armistice Day?
The marches should happen in a way that does not disrupt the Remembrance Sunday services. They should happen within the law. People have a right in our country to make the case for the issues they care about in a respectful and lawful way. If there's anybody that breaches the law or harasses people in breach of the law, then the police should be and will be taking action against those individuals. But so long as people respect each other's views, do not interrupt Remembrance Sunday services, which absolutely should not happen under any circumstances, then people have the right to make the case for the issues they care about in our democracy. That's an important protection that we should all be very supportive of.
Well, Darren Jones, we appreciate your time this morning. Thanks very much indeed for joining us.